Welcome to Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, published in 1813, one of the greatest love stories ever written. And it starts with one of the greatest opening lines in all of literature. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. And so our story begins. Meet the Bennet family. 5 daughters, 1 anxious mother, 1 sarcastic father, and absolutely 0 male heirs. This is a problem in 1813 England. The estate, Longbourn, can only be inherited by a man. When Mr. Bennet dies, the family loses everything. Marriage isn't romantic here, it's survival. Meet our heroine, Elizabeth Bennet, second eldest, sharp, witty, independent, and absolutely not interested in marrying for money. Her mother finds this infuriating. News hits the village like a thunderbolt. A rich, single gentleman named Mr. Charles Bingley has rented Netherfield Park nearby. Mrs. Bennet practically vibrates with excitement. Mr. Bennet secretly visits Bingley first, then pretends he hasn't, just to tease his wife. It is the most chaotic and delightful bit of husband behavior in literary history. At the local ball, Bingley arrives with his sisters and his best friend, the tall, impossibly wealthy, and immediately insufferable Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy. Bingley dances with Jane, twice. He is immediately smitten. Jane glows. The entire room notices. Mrs. Bennet is already planning the wedding in her head. Darcy, meanwhile, refuses to dance with anyone he doesn't already know. When Bingley suggests Elizabeth, Darcy looks at her and says, "She is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me." Elizabeth laughs it off and tells the story to everyone. This is who she is. She refuses to be wounded by arrogance. She turns every insult into ammunition. Here's what Darcy doesn't say out loud. He actually finds Elizabeth fascinating. Her eyes, her laugh, her complete refusal to be impressed by him. He is losing his composure. Jane falls ill after riding to Netherfield in the rain. Elizabeth walks 3 miles through muddy fields to nurse her sister, arriving with dirty hands and bright sparkling eyes. Bingley's snobbish sister Caroline cannot believe it. She mocks Elizabeth's muddy hams to Darcy. Darcy replies that it only made her eyes brighter. Caroline is livid. While Jane recovers, Elizabeth stays at Netherfield. She and Darcy spar in conversation every single night. He's used to people agreeing with him. Elizabeth never does. Enter Mr. Collins, Mr. Bennet's cousin, the man who will inherit Longbourn. He is pompous, obsequious, long-winded, and absolutely thrilled with himself in every possible way. Collins announces he wants to marry one of the Bennet daughters to make amends for inheriting their home. His patroness, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, approves of this plan. He finds this very impressive. Collins proposes to Elizabeth. She refuses him immediately and completely. He assumes she's being coy, because surely no woman would refuse a clergyman of his caliber. Mrs. Bennet is furious. She begs Mr. Bennet to force Elizabeth to accept. Mr. Bennet calls Elizabeth into his study and tells her, "Your mother will never speak to you again if you don't accept, and I will never speak to you again if you do." Collins, unbothered, immediately proposes to Elizabeth's friend Charlotte Lucas, who accepts. Charlotte doesn't marry for love, she marries for security. Elizabeth is heartbroken for her. Meanwhile, a militia regiment arrives in the village. Among them, the devastatingly handsome, utterly charming Mr. George Wickham. He immediately sets his sights on Elizabeth. Wickham tells Elizabeth a devastating story, that Darcy cheated him out of an inheritance left by Darcy's own father. Wickham is charming. The story is convincing. Elizabeth believes every word. This is the genius of the novel. Both Darcy and Wickham are presenting themselves. One is rude but honest. One is charming but lying. Elizabeth believes the wrong one. Bingley hosts a grand ball at Netherfield. Elizabeth arrives hoping to dance with Wickham, but Wickham doesn't come. And then the worst possible thing happens. Darcy asks her to dance. They dance together in tense, competitive silence, trading barbs dressed up as conversation. The whole room watches. The chemistry is undeniable. Both of them hate that. The evening is ruined when Mrs. Bennet loudly proclaims at dinner that Jane will surely marry Bingley. Elizabeth wants to disappear under the table. Darcy's expression becomes a wall again. Then, without warning, Bingley leaves Netherfield. His sisters write coldly to Jane, suggesting he will marry Darcy's sister Georgiana. Jane is quietly devastated. Elizabeth is furious on Jane's behalf. She suspects Darcy and Bingley's sisters orchestrated the separation. She is partially right, and she doesn't know the half of it yet. Charlotte and Collins are married and settled in Kent. Elizabeth visits them. Collins shows off his cottage, which is basically next door to Lady Catherine de Bourgh's enormous mansion. Lady Catherine de Bourgh, Darcy's aunt, is one of the great comic villains of English literature, opinionated, domineering, and convinced she is the authority on absolutely everything. And then, Darcy arrives to visit his aunt. He keeps finding excuses to walk to the Collins cottage where Elizabeth is staying. He tells himself it is courtesy. It is not courtesy. Colonel Fitzwilliam, Darcy's cousin, chats with Elizabeth and casually mentions that Darcy recently saved a friend from an imprudent attachment. Elizabeth immediately realizes he means Bingley and Jane. Darcy arrives unannounced at the cottage while Elizabeth is alone. He paces, he struggles. He clearly did not plan to say what he says next, and then he says it. Darcy proposes, but does it spectacularly badly. He tells her his feelings are against his will and reason, that her family is beneath him, but he loves her anyway. It does not land well. Elizabeth refuses him completely. She accuses him of separating Jane and Bingley, of destroying Wickham's future, and of being arrogant and unkind. He is utterly stunned. He leaves in silence. The next morning, he shoves a letter under her door, and this letter changes absolutely everything. Darcy's letter is devastating. He explains why he separated Bingley from Jane. He genuinely thought Jane wasn't in love. He was wrong, but his intentions were not cruel. Then, Wickham. Darcy reveals the full truth. Wickham gambled away his inheritance, demanded more money, was refused, and then tried to elope with Darcy's 15-year-old sister Georgiana. Months later, Elizabeth travels with her aunt and uncle Gardiner to Derbyshire, and they visit Pemberley, Darcy's estate. Elizabeth only agrees because she's told Darcy isn't home. The housekeeper tells them Darcy is the best master, the kindest brother, nothing like the man Elizabeth imagined. She starts to wonder if she ever saw him clearly at all. And then, Darcy arrives home early, unexpected. They meet in the garden, and it is mortifying and electric, and neither of them can look away. Darcy is different here, warm, attentive, genuinely kind. He introduces her to his beloved sister Georgiana. He is trying, without saying so, to show her who he actually is. Everything crashes to a halt. A letter arrives. The youngest Bennet sister, Lydia, 16 years old, has eloped with Wickham. No marriage planned, just run away together, full scandal. In 1813, England, one unmarried daughter's scandal ruins all the sisters' chances of marriage. This is not just embarrassing, it is potentially catastrophic for the entire family. The Gardiner uncle rushes to London to find them. The family waits in agony, and then Wickham is found. He agrees to marry Lydia, but his debts are enormous. Someone paid them. Elizabeth discovers the truth. It was Darcy. He tracked down Wickham privately, paid off all his debts, secured the marriage, and told no one. He did it entirely for Elizabeth. Elizabeth realizes she loves Darcy, fully, completely, with no conditions, and she knows she may have destroyed any chance of it by refusing him so brutally the first time. Bingley and Darcy return to Netherfield. Bingley, now free of Darcy's misguided interference, finally proposes to Jane. Jane cries. Mrs. Bennet cries louder. Everyone cries. Lady Catherine arrives at Longbourn, furious. She has heard rumors Darcy intends to marry Elizabeth. She demands Elizabeth promise to refuse him. Elizabeth politely but firmly says no. Lady Catherine storms off to tell Darcy about Elizabeth's refusal to make promises. This backfires spectacularly, because it tells Darcy that Elizabeth's feelings may have changed. Darcy finds Elizabeth walking alone. There is no preamble this time, no arrogance, just a man standing in front of a woman, asking her, again, completely honestly. He tells her his feelings have not changed. He tells her he loves her. This time there is no lecture about her inferior connections, just love, plain and honest. Elizabeth says yes. She tells him that her own prejudice made her blind to his real character and that she loves him now fully. He acknowledges his pride caused him to act badly. Mr. Bennet, who loves Elizabeth most of all, gives his blessing, but only after asking, "Are you sure? Is he truly worthy of you?" He needs to know she isn't just settling. Jane and Bingley marry first. Pure, sweet, uncomplicated love rewarded. Then Elizabeth and Darcy. Two of the most satisfying marriages in literary history on the same page. Elizabeth moves to Pemberley, one of the finest estates in England. She becomes its mistress. The girl who walked through muddy fields now walks through gardens that go on for miles. Darcy and Elizabeth grow to be everything to each other. He learns warmth. She learns depth. She teaches him to laugh. He teaches her to see below the surface. They are perfect. And what of the others? Wickham and Lydia live extravagantly and are perpetually short of money. Collins continues to worship Lady Catherine. Mary reads. Kitty improves. Life goes on. Pride and Prejudice is not just a love story. It is about learning to see clearly, past your own vanity, past first impressions, past the masks people wear, and past your own. If you love this, subscribe for more classic and romance book summaries every week. Drop a comment,